Well, it's shouldn't be a big surprise to anybody to come to Capitol Hill and talk about artificial intelligence. The interns are trying to figure that out. You can go to ChatGPT and ask the average IQ of a congressman and see how that turns out. But this is an important topic because, as Chris so well laid out, it's about financial services, about the future of financial services, and Jim in his introduction talked about TRs look to the future. You can't ever go backwards. You've always got to move forward. You can't change events. It's about how you manage your own behavior in events, and human progress is ever changing, ever moving, never static, and AI is one of those things. And when these moments happen, though, you definitely have people react in challenging ways, like fear is a typical one, or people freeze up and don't do anything, or they try to put, a rock over the top of it and not let it advance or move, and that's just not realistic. It's just not realistic. I mean, if you go back to the 1990s, if that's what former Congressman, former SEC Chairman Chris Cox had done back in 1996, if that had been the direction of the Congress in the 90s on telecommunications policy, you wouldn't have all that computing power in your pocket. You wouldn't have been able to see the cheap, affordable, in your pocket phone experience that you've had since the 90s. Alltel Information Systems and Alltel Corporation's headquartered in Little Rock, now part of Verizon, but they were one of those pioneering public companies right in the 2nd Congressional District that created, the competitive market for cell phone technology. You wouldn't have had that. You would not have had the free and open internet that allowed you to have a dial-up AOL account and email and begin surfing the net and determining just how great future it is. You wouldn't have had the chance to either own pets.com or Amazon in 1998. You wouldn't have seen global commerce blossom if Congress had decided in 1996, no, this is insane. There's pornography out on this thing called the World Wide Web. I don't know how it works. How do we protect our kids from that? How do we protect people from sending you an email that's like a Nigerian prince, now electronically? We need to regulate it. We got to stop this. We need to put a rock on top of it. Did we do that? No. Have you seen the entire globe prosper and benefit from a free and open internet since the 90s? And lower, cheaper, more effective computing power and cell phone service in your pocket? Yeah, I think so. So we are now at that point when you think about that, whether you're talking about blockchain and my other hat that I have in fintech on how we're going to write apps on the next level of the internet on a blockchain. But the same is true about artificial intelligence. So we need to get this right, and I want to say on behalf of the Financial Services Committee, nobody's worked harder on this for 5 years, understanding it, than the members of our committee. You go back to 2019, Maxine Waters, then Chair Waters, worked with the committee to set up a FinTech task force and an artificial intelligence task force in 2019. And I was pleased to chair both those on behalf of the Republicans, and Steve Lynch chaired the FinTech Task Force, and Bill Foster chaired the AI Task Force, going back to 2019. And now Foster and I serve on Hakeem Jeffries and Mike Johnson's Artificial Intelligence Task Force for the whole House. And Steve Lynch and I co-chair the House Financial Services Committee working group on AI. And we've just put out our report this week. You can find it at the House Financial Services Committee website. And it's important that we in this country get this right because of our innovative spirit and our global position to help lead in technology in our commercial private sector. There's a growing effort to do that. You've seen Chuck Schumer appoint an AI task force in the Senate. We have the one in the House. The White House has issued an executive order on this subject, and countries around the world are all grappling with what to do about artificial intelligence, including our friends in Europe that are, intent on regulating it, setting up a lot of rules around it. But the goal we had for our workforce working group was to first ask the regulators and supervisors in the agencies of our jurisdiction, financial services jurisdiction, and HUD, how are you using it in your agency? And some agencies have crickets in that conversation, and others have engagement. Then we ask the regulators, supervisors, and HUD, how are you looking at this for the private sector entities and players that are in your domain? How are you setting up your guiding principles as a supervisor or as a regulator or as a cabinet agency to oversee it? That was our very first working group of 6 that we did in the committee. And it was pretty informative, actually. And I think everybody, Steve Lynch and the Democrats and certainly the Republicans, we all listened to that. We had HUD, we had SEC, CFPB, and the bank regulators. They were all principles-based. And I think that's precisely the takeaway in thinking about AI oversight, whether it's in your business, your corporation, or at the Department of Defense, or as we think about it in the rubric of doing oversight in our role in Congress, and that is to be principles-based. Meaning they weren't going to stop you from experimenting with AI. The regulators, were not going to say to Bank A, you can't use AI in your business. We're not going to say that. And I think that is a decent starting point for this whole discussion, because AI offers immense productivity gains, and we want more output per worker, which is what productivity is. And AI offers that potential at scale. We want people who are more compliant with all the rules and regulations offered to protect consumers and business and fair play between commercial businesses. AI offers the ability to do that more effectively than just a group of watchers that are human staring at computer screens all day. It's a tool that makes the human leader, the human compliance officer, the human lender, the human consumer advocate more effective. It's not a replacement for that person. It makes that person more effective, at scale, faster, to do more complex tasks, and leave those decision-making tasks to the boss, to the person, to the human. This technology is just like the game changer it was for me in high school chemistry when we didn't have to use a slide rule anymore and we could use an HP12C or whatever the heck it was called. Jim remembers this because he gave it up for the stone tablets that he was using. So I view this as a tool to be used by American and Japanese and global business people and scientists and government leaders and compliance officers to make their life better and more effective. Now, I've connected the dots between being principles-based and then all the concerns people have about unleashed generative AI. And I've linked those because I've kept referring back to the boss, the human. And so the second guiding principle, I think, from our work is there's a human in the loop. There's a person in the loop. Because in the financial services space, for insurance, capital markets activities, commercial banking, regulations that revolve around all aspects of real estate, from buying and selling a home to financing it to selling that mortgage in the secondary market, you've got a lot of rules. A lot of rules. And they're not really disruptive. They are to be followed. And so keeping a person in the loop also comes up with, I think, the third key point I believe we took away from the work we did on a bipartisan basis in the working group, which is that because you use AI, you're under no exemption from all the laws that you're supposed to be complying with. If you used a piece of parchment and a quill pen, you're under obligation to comply with fair lending, fair credit reporting, state insurance regulations, housing protections. And the same is true if you use an AI model, machine learning algorithm to advance your work. So I think that is the right way to think about this. That AI is a tool to be used to boost productivity in all kinds of extraordinary scientific, business, commercial, personal interaction. That it should be principles-based, that we should let this be experimented with, used to make our lives more effective, whether it's on our personal phone with ChatGPT or determining a new compound that will cure ovarian cancer. One of the most inspirational, I'll conclude with this, Jim, then we can have questions. One of the most inspirational aspects of this work has been I've gone to MIT twice, once with the House Intelligence Committee, where we go up and retreat at MIT, and Lincoln Labs on things of national security related to quantum computing, artificial intelligence, the greatest advances that we have in science and how those impact the national security space. But Steve Lynch, a great representative of Greater Boston, and I invited the committee up there for financial services to walk through the research at MIT as it relates to AI's use in financial services. And I walked away with the amazement of the capability that we've mapped the human genome, and now using machine learning, we can go through every conceivable compound mix of proteins and determine what a drug would look like that would take humans really years to go through those permutations without using an algorithmic machine learning data analytic basis made a reality by artificial intelligence. So we will have new drugs and all kinds of things that we would never have if we didn't have the power of large language models and machine learning using a data set designed by scientists at a major university like MIT. The other thing I walked away with is the humility of this. This is not ready for prime time. There are many errors. The adoption model for AI use has skyrocketed only since 2017, when an AI image model on a university campus at Stanford, for example, couldn't even figure out if that's a car in the picture or not. It's machine learning. So it is generative in this good sense, that it is constantly trying to improve itself, but it is learning. So it is not perfect, which is why you want the human in the loop. And that's been reiterated to me. And so in my experience in talking to the private sector, people are being very cautious about this. And they're very cognizant. They want a human in the loop. They're very cognizant that they have all those laws and regulations to comply with, and that they're still responsible for that, not some anonymous algorithmic solution to a question somebody put in a chat box. So I hope you'll enjoy our report. Speaker Johnson and Minority Leader Jeffries will have a report this fall that outlines our viewpoints at the Congress at large, much broader context than financial services. But Dr. Foster and I have certainly enjoyed that experience and how we have helped bring the financial services point of view to that group as well. So I think I'll stop there, Jim, and happy to take questions.
Very good. Thank you, sir.